Coming up on the Authorpreneur podcast, it was shocking to get a 5-star review because I was like, and the stupid thing is I read the review, I looked at this person's profile, and I found a reason to discount it, and it's just insane. Like, I can't accept praise of any kind. This is how much it's affected, reading my reviews has affected my mental health and my belief in myself as an author. So, yeah, so just learn the lesson from me. Do not read your reviews. It's not worth it, especially if you're publishing your first few books. Welcome to the Authorpreneur podcast. I'm your host, mystery author Amelia D. Hay. On this podcast, I will bring you writing, book marketing, and self-publishing advice so that you can create your dream author business, build your author platform, and be creatively independent. You can find the episode show notes and lots more information on the podcast page at authorpreneurpodcast.com/podcast. Hello, writers. So it's been a while since I filmed or recorded a behind the scenes author diary update. So that's what I'm going to do in this episode. I'm going to talk to you about what I've been doing since January of 2022. And this episode isn't going to be scripted, mainly because if I sort of have to start scripting these episodes, it's going to take me a long time to be able to produce the episode. And I thought, I know what I've done this year, so I shouldn't have to rely on a script to talk about that. It's not like I want to say something in a certain way because it's super important for me to communicate it. I'm just simply talking about my year. So in this show, I'm going to talk about why I've trademarked my podcast name. I was going to talk about it and then I didn't, but there's a reason. I'm also going to talk about the books I've published this year, as well as my mixed feelings about using ARC services, and I'm going to come out of the closet as a book cover designer. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. But before we do that, throughout this episode, I'll be referencing tools and services that I've used. If you're interested in reading the transcript or would like links to anything that I've mentioned in the show, then check out the very long blog post or edited transcript at authorpreneurpodcast.com/BTS048. And if you're new to the podcast, I want to say a huge thank you for stopping by and trying out my show. To those of you who have been faithfully listening, thank you for regularly listening in and supporting me. Your support means more to me than you know. So I think I'll start off with a bit of a life update. Does that make sense? So during August, so the last episode of this podcast I released was in August, and I had plans to release through September, October, and November. And I don't know, it's just this thing with when I make plans, I don't know, it's like I'm cursed. I had to pause the podcast because there were renovations occurring in the next building. So what was happening is, because I live in London, they look like Victorian sort of maisonettes where the houses are all together. And there's like a series of entrances and it sort of looks like that. It's very Victorian. And then the next building isn't attached to us. So there's like a 3 little masonettes attached together. Then there's a space between the building. It's not even enough I think it's enough for a person to walk through. Like, it's super narrow. So they put up the scaffolding, and the scaffolding literally touched our windows. And because the scaffolding was that close, because the scaffolding is put up so the painters or whatever it was that they were doing could walk on the scaffolding, so naturally my days were filled with builders chatter and the noise that just comes with the building site. It's naturally noisy. Like, it wasn't the worst experience of my life, but it sort of meant that recording was a nightmare. So I either had to record, I'm not a morning person, so that's just out of the question for me. I just can't function in the morning, and it sort of meant that I would have to record late at night, that would sort of approach into when I write the best, as well as time that I would spend with my husband. So I sort of felt screwed either way. So I thought I'll just wait for the renovations to finish. I got no notice, by the way. It just one day the scaffolding just came up, and I was like, oh damn, I haven't recorded the next podcast episode. I'm absolutely screwed. I thought maybe this will go on for a couple of weeks. Nope. I could still hear them when they moved the scaffolding to the other side of the building too, which was great. And then there was a renovation in the hallway off my building. So my level and the ground level hallways were being renovated as well. So it was fun. So that's the reason behind, I guess, this particular long absence between August and now. And to be quite frank with you, I'm just going to drop this episode as quickly as I possibly can and schedule the next episode in a couple of weeks, just depending on how many episodes I can squeeze out this week. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about what I'm going to share with you, but I've trademarked the name of my podcast. And part of the reason why I have mixed feelings is the reason why I've done it. And I don't want to draw attention to what I consider bad behavior. So I've trademarked the name of my podcast. So what I've trademarked is, I haven't trademarked the word Authorpreneur because that's just a dick move. It's horrible. It's a horrible thing to do. I mean, we all heard Cockygate, right? So I feel like using trademarking the word Authorpreneur isn't nice. So my brand is technically Authorpreneur Podcast because that's the URL. So that's the brand. My brand is the Authorpreneur Podcast. So I think I didn't trademark the word "the" in it because I don't use it in my URL. Although I have purchased that URL too. So I ended up purchasing that because there's another individual out there with a podcast with the same name. So at the time it was January, and I was like, oh, maybe he didn't just see the 80 episodes that I have published. Because when you Google, I've tried Googling this on computers that aren't mine. Mine's, when you type in Authorpreneur Podcast, mine's the first one that comes up. Because people have come and gone in the space. Even though I'm sporadic, I'm still very much alive and well. Like my website's been updated recently. You see like all of where I'm pushing out my podcast to, my website, all my social medias, it's all there. I've got like 300 blog posts under this name. What I've done is, it's a lot of stuff. So I reached out to them politely and let them know that they were using my brand name. And I'd been using this brand name since 2017. And what I had suspected happened is they didn't research the podcast name. They didn't type it into Google. And I pointed out, if you were to type this into Google, you can see all of this stuff with my name on it. And part of the reason I wanted to point this out to him is, if his audience is looking for him, there's a good chance they're going to find me first. And that's not good. If you're building an audience, having the same name as somebody else isn't going to help. Isn't going to help you. So that's where I came from. I made sure I was super, super polite. And the response I got from that, you ask, was met with, I was just blocked. The only way I can contact this podcaster is on Instagram. So that led me to trademark my podcast name, because I have all the URLs associated with it. They had released 16 episodes. They didn't have an intro, so there was no actual name to change. It was just the artwork. And Whereas I had 80, I have intros on every single one of my episodes. It's a lot of work. I heavily edit this. And I'm not going to lie, this has sucked the joy out of podcasting for me. I feel like I've invested a ton of time into this and I've enjoyed it. Even though I've published sporadically, it's definitely been a labor of love. And someone's just come along and hijacked my brand and no one else cares but me, of course, because it's my brand. It was soul crushing. So, which is what I ended up deciding to trademark it, because I thought I should have protected this when I started. I just thought everyone at the time was honest and kind in the publishing space, and they weren't doing stuff like this. So I didn't trademark it because I thought, the self-publishing space has always been fun and a friendly environment. But this actually happened a few weeks ago, and because I've shared this story, I feel like it would be hypocritical if I didn't share this next one. So while I'm being brutally honest, in the same vein, I realized that my other podcast, the Book Nerd podcast, has the same name as another podcast, and I'm embarrassed. So I'm rebranding that one, and I didn't see this podcast. It's exactly the same name on Google. So I'm guessing, and this podcast has been going for years, which is quite shocked. Like, they got episodes from 2019 or 2018, and I was like, oh. So I'm wondering if their SEO has just improved over time since I looked, because I originally called this podcast the Thriller Novel Nerd Podcast, and I felt sort of trapped by the name because I was really talking about books in the mystery, thriller, and suspense category, and which is why I changed it to the Book Nerd, just in case. But anyway, so I'm absolutely horrified that I've done this, because this isn't okay. It isn't okay that I've named my podcast the same as this other people, but I've only got 8 episodes out, so I'm not going to go through and re-edit all of those and slap the new intro in. I've already changed all of the podcast artwork, the name. I have recorded new intros to use from episode, I think, 10. Maybe I should check how many episodes I actually have out. Yeah, because I have 88 episodes out, and I'm wondering if the discoverability for this podcast wasn't particularly great, and then they had done something that sort of moved the needle for them. I've got 10 episodes, including that inaugural one. So I'm not going to go back and change the introduction, the sort of intro and outro, because I then have to go through and sort of change all of the references to the show title and all the episodes. So I think I'm just going to accept that I called my podcast this for a time. I'm going to create an update episode and explain I've realized that this other podcast has the same name as me. It was an honest mistake, and this is what I'm going to call the podcast moving forward, and then just release the new episodes, if that makes sense, because I feel it's important to do the right thing, because I do feel like this is the right thing now that I know, and I don't just want to slap my name on it and call it my, Amelia's Book Nerd podcast, because that's just dodgy. I'm still hijacking that person's brand. They've spent 88 episodes creating content for that podcast. It's not like, that's just, for me, it feels wrong. But I'm going to get off my soapbox. I don't know, I just feel really nervous about drawing attention to these things because it's not nice. I just feel really bad because I know how I felt when I discovered this, and it hurt. But they also haven't reached out to me. This is just something I've discovered on my own. They probably don't know about me because I'm so tiny. But it is what it is. But moving on. So now on to publishing. So what have I published this year? So You're not going to believe it, but I published a third edition of Missing. And there's a reason. So it has a new title. It's now called Suspicion. And I made changes to the plot, which is why I gave it a new title. It wasn't just because with the second edition, I fixed a plot hole. Well, I consider it a plot hole because the readers didn't realize that I had wrapped this up, that this person was getting arrested for this, and I just went back and made the connections between the clues and the bad guy in the second edition more obvious because they were really subtle. And so I published that. And I don't know, at the time I was attached with this particular person being the villain for some reason. So after I published that second edition, I eventually realized as I was writing Duplicity and I was setting up the third book that I'd written myself into a corner and potentially ruined a series that I could write with Maximilian Nichols. So I decided that, and also I also didn't like the fact that my book wasn't as twisty as I had hoped it would be. And I think this is really important for a mystery that it has a twist that the reader doesn't see coming. Although some readers say they saw it coming, so I feel like I can't win. But I didn't like the fact that it was so obvious from the midpoint of the story. So I thought I need to change the plot so I can get myself out of that corner. After much deliberation, and I'm going to say this is a mistake, but I hired a copy editor, did a proofread, published the book, pushed it out to ARCs and to ARC readers using Book Sirens and Book Sprout, but I got more readers on Book Sirens. And I think as I was updating the links at the back of the book for Suspicion, I realized there was a duplicate chapter. And I think this was in September, and I almost had a stroke. So chapter 22 was duplicated. So chapter 21 and 2 are the same. But chapter 21 was supposed to be a different chapter from another character's point of view. And when I saw it, I was like, ooh. So I made those changes immediately. So one of the arcs on Book Sirens, which was really helpful, actually said that they felt the last third of the book wasn't as well written. And I thought, shit, that's because I've done a copy edit and not a line edit. And what a line edit is, it's exactly what it sounds. They go through every word, every line of your book, and they make sure that you're using, the right words. And this is really something that's important to me, that I'm using the right words and I'm painting the right picture in the reader's mind. And I think that's important. So a copy edit doesn't really do that. It's very different. Line edit, it is more artistic. It doesn't always follow the grammar rules, whereas copy editing will follow all of those grammar rules. But that's the sort of difference in a nutshell. I probably need to talk to an interview an editor about this. So I found that line editor on Fiverr and had a great experience because he gave me a style sheet and he pointed out what genre he thought my book was in. And I thought, where were you when I was publishing Missing? Because that's helpful. If you're a new author, it's nice to have someone point out to you, this book sits here, because you don't know really. I mean, you sort of think, oh, I think it's this. But having that other second opinion who didn't write your book is really helpful because they're looking at the book in a different way. So I had a really great experience, and I think the line edit, my book is roughly 45,000 words and it's under 45,000 words. I think it's like somewhere between 42 and 45. Honestly, can't remember. And I think it cost me 179 British pounds. So it's not that bad. I think I can't remember what it is in US dollars. I will put the US dollar equivalent price as of today on the screen for those of you who don't use British pounds, just so you can get an idea of what it actually means for you. So it was during the formatting for the line edited edition of the 3rd edition. I didn't do a proofread because I didn't add in any extra text as a part of the line editing experience. I just accepted all of his suggested changes, and that was it. And this is when I found the duplicate chapter and the missing chapter mistake. It was only until recently, and I do believe this was a book formatting error done by me. And recently, I've had a Booksprout reader point this out both in the review and as a note to me personally. And I think this is the big difference between Booksprout and Booksiren, is the reader can actually communicate with you and actually say, hey, you've made a mistake like this. This is really helpful. Whereas no one at Booksiren's noticed this. They didn't mention it in the reviews, nothing. There's no way of communicating with people when they say, oh, you know, for instance, that person said the last third of the book wasn't as well written. I had to assume that it was the line edit. Like there was no way for me to reach out to that Booksiren's reader and ask, other than in the reviews, which you should never do. So as you might have guessed, I've been experimenting with Booksirens and Booksprout, and I have mixed feelings about using these services. I know that sounds really pretentious, but I'm wondering about what are the repercussions of being honest about my experiences with these services, because I know sometimes, well, I know one of these companies is really quick to respond to people. So, and that's what sort of makes it sort of scary. This is why I don't respond to reviews either, because I'm scared that if I say something I don't like that they won't want to hear, then they could say something back to me. I'm worried, I don't know, if the readers see it, they might get upset and change their reviews. Like, that's what I'm worried about, because you don't know how people are going to react. Some people are naturally petty, and that's fine. But me talking about my experience, it's mainly for authors. It's not for readers who use these services. It's more for setting expectations and considering why you use these services and why not to. But I don't know, it's just the internet, and I'm kind of scared. So I don't know what to do with that, because I feel like everything you do has consequences. And I did another brutally honest review about another service, and I don't know, I'm a little scared about that too. Every time I get a comment, I get a lot of comments on this blog post, I just get terrified. I'm absolutely terrified. It's weird that I'm just so anxious about being honest on the internet. It's nuts, but it is what it is. So I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm considering talking about it. So I think at some point I'll just grow a spine and talk about it. But until that spine grows, I'm on the fence. If you've heard something useful in this episode that was helpful to you and you'd like to support the show, then buy me a coffee for as little as $2 at buymeacoffee.com/author80hey. Well, I haven't yet published Duplicity, but it's on pre-order, so I'm classing this as published. So this year, I've also published Duplicity, which is the second book in the James Lond series. I haven't published or written the second Rookie Reporter book. But I'm just going to talk about what I have done, not what I haven't done. So I finally finished the rewrite draft. Honestly, I thought that day would never come when I sort of stopped rewriting. It was really, rewriting a book was the most difficult thing I've done. It was just, because not only was it heavily outlined, but I had to change it. And this was a big book. I think when the rewrite started, the book was 50K, and it's now 85. Like, it's so huge. So this is the cover, and this is sort of how thick it is. So it's, for those of you who are watching on the podcast who don't like going on YouTube, don't like watching things, the spine is roughly almost, it's 1.5 fingers wide. I think it's 342 pages in total, including front and back matter, but the story itself is 335. So it's not the longest book I've written. I'm not looking forward to that one. That's book 4. But book 2 was actually only supposed to be 50K. That was the plan. I think the extra 35,000 words were necessary, and I think it's made the book so much better. And then after I finished that rewrite draft, I then went and did revisions, and this was painful too, because I felt like and this is when I had the epiphany, I can't keep writing like this. It was just really difficult. So it was during the revision stage that I admitted to myself that I didn't like missing, and I felt like no one was going to read that book, and as a consequence wouldn't read the others. That's what prompted me to do the 3rd edition. So it was during this, and I was also terrified of moving forward with the editing, because it was going closer to publishing, and I thought, knowing my luck, the first person who'll read it, just like Missing, they'll hate it. They'll give me 1 star or DNF me on Goodreads, and I'll feel like I'm the shittiest writer in the world. And that's how I felt. So that was after that review and spending time reading reviews on Goodreads, I felt like I was the shittiest writer on earth, and it was really bad for my mental health. So I think writing the candidate and rewriting this, it was really hard for me, and I made that worse by looking at my reviews. And I should have just ignored it, and I should have kept writing, and I should have kept learning the craft and writing the next thing, because you become better. The more you write, the better you get, because you obviously turn things in and you get feedback, and you get feedback from beta readers and editors. So with this book, I used a paid beta reader on Fiverr before I went through and did the editing. And with this, I just wanted to be aware of how the reader was going to perceive the book. I wasn't necessarily prepared to rewrite anything unless I had made a plot mistake, but I was sure that I didn't do this time. And I have a technique to stop myself from leaving a plot hole, from having a plot hole in an outlined novel. So I read that, and I was pretty happy with the response I got. Not all of the characters in this book are likable. Like, you shouldn't, and let's address the elephant in the room. I write murder mysteries, so yeah, they're all murder suspects, so they're not pleasant people. So it was more how James Alond sort of came across, and whether the story was interesting, and whether someone stopped reading at certain points. But I didn't get that feedback. So I went and did 3 rounds of line edits with my usual editor. I then did a proofread. And after the line edits were finished, I put it up for proofread, because when I submit it onto the proofread, I get told there's this much of a wait, and then the proofread will take this long. So I thought, okay. So I added about a month's buffer, and just in case something went wrong. So that's what I did, and I'm proud that I did that, because this book is technically ready, but it's just waiting to be sent out. It's waiting to be published. And I've decided to build my own ARC reader list. And at this stage, I'm still using Booksprout. And so I've pushed this. I actually copyrighted this book before. Well, technically it is copyrighted, but I sent it off to the copywriting company that Joanna Penn uses in the UK, just so I have something in, like, on paper that says that I am the author of this and I hold the copyright for it. It's just so if someone were to, one of the people I sent the arc out decided to plagiarize it and publish it as their own work, I can turn around and say, well, actually, this is actually my book. And it's easy for me to prove that than having to do something else. Pushing through a certificate from like a proper authorized company just looks better than me typing up this message saying, oh, this is my book, blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is that you have to do to prove that you hold the copyright when you don't have a certificate. So I'm still using Booksprout. I published so I sent the ebook out to my email list. Well, not my entire email list, just the people who let me know that they wanted to be an ARC reader and leave reviews. So I sent it out to those people. I copyrighted it before I sent it out. And then I decided I just wanted to use Booksprout because there was one person on there that said to me that they wanted to join. On Booksprout, you now have the ability to set up an ARC list, a list of ARC readers, and somebody had joined that of their own accord, and I was like, yay. And they had left a really nice review, so I thought maybe they want to read the next book. So I pushed it out, and the next day so someone read the book in a day, and I received my first 5-star review for Duplicity. And it was shocking to get a 5-star review because I was like, and the stupid thing is I read the review, I looked at this person's profile, and I found a reason to discount it, and it's just insane. Like, I can't accept praise of any kind. This is how much it's affected, reading my reviews has affected my mental health and my belief in myself as an author. So, yeah, so just learn the lesson from me. Do not read your reviews. It's not worth it, especially if you're publishing your first few books. Because, spoiler alert, I went into this knowing that Missing was not going to be my best book. I knew it wasn't perfect. Because I went into the mindset of I'm yet to write my best book. It's not this one. It's probably not Duplicity. It's probably not the next one, or Immunity. I'm yet to think of it. I'm yet to write it. So that's the attitude I went in, and I just, because I didn't get this feedback from, the 3 rounds of line editing and proofreading, because in order to do line editing, they have to actually read your book. So the editor didn't say anything like this to me. They thought she actually enjoyed reading the book. So that's what prompted me to use the paid beta readers, actually. So I'm using pre-orders on Amazon. Probably isn't the best strategy because no one's really looking for my books to pre-order them because I don't have a waiting fan base. But as an experiment, I've scheduled a series of promotional emails with my list for the book launch, which is something I don't usually do. And they're not particularly groundbreaking, but I will share with you. I obviously can't share the program. I'm just going to log in and remind myself what those emails are because I wrote them at the beginning of October. So I got the official book launch email, And that just has the book blurb, the book cover, as well as where to find the book on the store. And that comes out the day it's published. And then this is only sent to the people who aren't on my ARC list, who aren't ARC readers. So just the people who just want to know about books and stuff like that get these. I've also got an ARC team review reminder sent out on the day of publishing. So there's only a certain amount of people who will see that, and it's only them that will see that. So they won't get the book launch email. They'll just get the ARC team review reminder. And then I've shared the prologue with my email list as an incentive with a continue reading button. And when they click on that button, it will go to the books to read page where they can find the book where they like reading. So I've only got those two so far. I am considering doing like a book reading on YouTube, or actually I probably should do it on my podcast as a part of promoting my book as well. We'll both so maybe read the prologue and the first chapter just to see how it goes, just to see if that drums up interest. And it is fun, but in saying that, doing a book reading is, I need to go through and prepare for it and highlight and create the script and take the script a little bit more seriously than what I do with when I do a script for this podcast, for instance, where I really do just kind of read it, but I like to write it in a way that I naturally speak. But I have also started promoting the first book in the series now that I've realized that there are no formatting mistakes made by yours truly, that I've started, so I've uploaded. The other thing I've done that I think is definitely worth mentioning, and I think I will share it with you actually. So this is what it looks like. So the order that I have my back matter in is the also by, because it's more important for people to see what else I've written. Then I have an ARC sign up at the back of suspicion and duplicity. So I've uploaded this to all of the stores. So I have called it something different. There is like just a standard file of suspicion without this at the back, and it's just got like an email sign up. But this one has, so got the also by, this is want the next book before anyone else. And this is basically a call for ARC readers. So I basically explain what they're getting. And it's just like a personal message. Because if someone gets this far in the book, they clearly like my book. And that's just the author's note. And I've put the same thing in duplicity, as at the back of duplicity as well. And I didn't particularly get this dialogue from anywhere. I just thought, because I did research, how do you ask for ARC readers at the back of a book? And it wasn't anywhere. So I'm sort of considering maybe I should share how I wrote this on the blog, just to explain the templates. Like, this is what this information, so I put this information, then this information, and then said these things. You don't obviously have to write this many words. So I added the ARC reader sign up at the back of the book, uploaded it, waited a few days, listed the book for free, asked Amazon to price match. Then I've started lining up promotions for suspicion as a way of encouraging, because when you see, for instance, when you look at my book on Apple and you download it for free, it will actually show you all the other books that are available to readers. so they can see the pre-order. So I thought if I push people to the first book in the series, I mean, what I'm saying isn't revolutionary. People have been saying it for years. But if I push people to the first book, they're going to see the second book because it's in my also buy. It's on the other pages on other stores, not Amazon, but it's everywhere else. It's a bit confusing, but it is. Like it's attached on Google Play, Kobo, Apple can. It's a part of the series. Barnes and Noble and Amazon, you can't actually see the pre-order on the series page, which is a bit weird because you would want that, but apparently that's not how Amazon and Barnes and Noble do it. But I thought at least on the other stores, it's a way of encouraging or at least letting people know that, hey, there's also a second book that's going to be available very soon. So I've lined up books with Free Booksy, a free book promotions with Free Booksy, Fuzzy Librarian, and a host of other free book sites. You notice I'm not dabbling in Amazon ads or Facebook ads or BookBub ads, mainly because those platforms require, I understand Facebook ads, but the Amazon ads and the BookBub ads, they require a steep learning curve, and it's getting towards the end of the year. I don't have time for that. I'll start experimenting that when I've got book 3 published and maybe 3 or 4, and I'll start doing those regular ads, but until then I don't really see the point. But I'm just promoting Suspicion for free to see if it will. It's an experiment just to see if it will encourage pre-orders. It probably won't, but at least people have got the first book. We'll see. So back when I was revising and rewriting and revising Duplicity, I had reached a point where part of the reason why I outline is I think it's a security blanket. It's an anxiety thing. I sort of feel like if I plan it out, it'll be a good story. And it's a crutch. But while I was rewriting Duplicity, I was just like, I can't do this. I definitely, the light bulb came on for me that I don't enjoy revision. I don't enjoy long revisions. And that's a big deal. And it's to the point where it was horrible. Whereas I enjoy creating the story, which is the outlining phase for me, and the writing. And I thought I became more open to writing into the dark or pantsing. So I brought a few courses by Dean Wesley Smith on writing into the dark and writing with depth. So I decided to write a short story, which ironically is now a novella, into the dark as a way of seeing, can I do both? And you know what? Writing into the dark is enjoyable. Spoiler alert. But I haven't finished the book, so I don't really want to get into too much detail. But the reason why I know the book is no longer a short story and is going to be a novella is the story needs a lot of setup. I sort of feel like before I show the dead, the body in a murder mystery, I first want to show the reader who the person is before they die and the suspects. And I feel like showing these people is more important than putting a body on page 1, which is what I normally do. It's very different to what I've done. Actually, Duplicity has a bit of a lead up to the body. And I feel like these characters need a lot of introduction. So I've reached 8,037 words. And I've just pointed out the person who was missing at dinner is most likely dead. As in, James is on the other side of the door. He's noticed blood on the floor and he's like, oh damn, I've just discovered another body. But it's behind a locked door. That's another course I did with Dean Wesley Smith, actually. It's about writing locked room mysteries. So I thought, oh, that's really interesting. So I sort of purchased that course as well, which is what prompted me to write the story in this way. But it also has a tie in with duplicity. So this is going to be a free product that I send to my list, but I'll put it out on all the stores as a paid product. But it's really written as a reward for the people who've subscribed, because they've been quite loyal. They've opened all of my emails, that kind of thing. So because I've introduced all of the characters at this point and the drama, I believe this is the midpoint of the story, because what's left is to figure out the whodunit, and there isn't a long list of who possibly could have done this crime. It's an impossible crime, but in saying that, I could be wrong. Maybe it could end up being a novel, which means I have to resolve all the plot points. So I will eventually start talking about my experiences with writing into the dark, but I was hoping to be able to talk to other writers who do pants or write into the dark. So if you do write into the dark and you've written more than, you've written say 2 or 3 books into the dark now and you've published them, then I'd love to talk to you if you want to be on my show. So just go over to the Authorpreneur website and I'll put up the URL for the Be On My podcast. So it's authorpreneurpodcast.com/podcast/interview. And it's just a podcast guest registration form, and I ask you a few things because I'm wanting very specific interviews for this season. So I want people who obviously write fiction, whether they plot or they write into the dark or they do a bit of both. I'm interested in understanding, in listening to you talk about how you write, just so it might be helpful for someone else to hear, oh, this is how they write. Because I think learning how Dean Wesley Smith writes has really helped me question whether I really do need to write the way that I do. And it has been fun. It's definitely a discovery, and it's an enjoyable discovery. Like, I've really enjoyed writing The Locked Room. But I will go more into depth about my experience later. So I guess now it's time for me to sort of come out of my book designer closet. So I've started designing pre-made book covers in the cozy, mystery, and romantic comedy genres, and I have been doing a bit of psychological thriller style book covers. And for the longest time, I've been really nervous. And I think this is a sort of insecure artist sort of thing. I sort of think, are my book covers good? I'm constantly questioning my ability to design covers. It's crazy, but I am. And I think that's just like the artist in me. But recently I've started branching out into custom cover design after a customer on Etsy actually messaged me and asked me for a quote. So that has been a really interesting experience. And I've had others, since I've had that first one, I've had other people sort of reach out to me and ask. And I'm also due to batch design a bunch of covers, pre-made covers for my store. I don't know what they are yet. I need to sort of think about what I want to try and sell. And I'm selling both on my website now and through Etsy. So I've had a few people actually find me and just purchase stuff directly on my website without even sort of contacting me. And I've been quite shocked by that. I thought, oh, how did you find me? So my company, The Villain Book Covers, is now searchable. And I have to admit, my experience with Etsy as a small content creator is becoming better now that they do custom digital products. It's much easier to sell on Etsy now. And I've also started experimenting with Etsy ads to create revenue for my business, and it's working well. Like, I'm using like $1 or $2 a day, and I'm able to, because the price of my product is quite high, I'm able to make a profit doing that. But it's not a ton of revenue and what I'm selling is super niche compared to what everyone else is selling on the website. So I'm naturally going to have a small customer base. So it is a nice side income. It's not enough to support my business yet, but I am making a profit with that company, which is nice. So that's all of the tasks I completed in terms of writing, book marketing, and email marketing this year. I must admit, I love these author diary episodes and I might return to them in the future. I've just realized this has gone on. I've been filming this for the longest time. I've definitely done a lot of blabbing. Maybe not blabbing. I've done a lot of talking and I've stayed on script too. So, sort of. I've said things that I kind of didn't plan on saying, but I felt it's beneficial for me to be honest with you about the year that I've had and the things that have gone on. So I think I will return to these in the future. It's just nice because I feel like these are just a chat about what I'm up to, and it's nice. I miss it. It's tragic, but I miss talking about myself. If you have any questions or have tips on book marketing that you'd love to share with me, please do come over to the blog post and share your thoughts in the comments section. And if you like, I'm happy to share your tip on the next episode of the podcast. And I'm actually thinking about starting a Discord with my podcast name. So let me know if you are interested in joining like a Discord community where you can chat with other people about self-publishing and just share tips and encourage each other. Hopefully it'll be a friendly place. So let me know if that's something you're interested in. And because I want to stay away from Facebook, I don't trust them. God, I really am showing my age, aren't I? So anyway, let me know if your thoughts on the Discord chat thing that I could set up. And you can do that by coming over to the blog post at authorpreneurpodcast.com/BTS048, or you can just leave a comment under the YouTube video, or if you see this on Facebook or Instagram, feel free to talk to me if there is a comment section on where you're listening or you find the post, wherever it is that you feel comfortable. But the comment sections on my blog are always open, and I do strive to reply back to people when they comment, because it is really important to me that I reply back to you when you take the time, especially to comment on my blog. If you spam me in my email, I probably won't reply, but if you take the time to chat with me on the blog and share your story, I am super friendly. Thank you for listening, and happy reading and writing, everybody. See, I drag everything out.